Hello and welcome to our Candid Conversations with Candidates presented by the Faribault Area Chamber of Commerce and Tourism. I'm Kim Anderson, Chamber President. We'd like to thank George Wickstrom of Northwestern Mutual Financial Network for underwriting the cost of this candidate coverage. The Chamber works year after year to represent the voice of business and to promote the growth and prosperity of our community. And it's very important to be involved in local elections, and so we're very pleased to be bringing you these candid conversations. We'd like to thank Troy Temple of TLT Video Productions and FCTV for making these broadcasts possible. So now we'll meet our candidates. We have our current state representative, Patty Fritz, and her opponent, Brian Daniels. Welcome.
Thank you.
Patty, we're going to start with you and just ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll learn more about Brian.
Well, thank you, Kim. Thank you for the opportunity again to have this interview with the Chamber and the members. I'm happy to be here. Yes, I am the state representative for this district, and I'm very honored and humbled again to have served and to continue to advocate for the constituents of this wonderful community that I have been resident of all of my life. My husband Jim and I are married. We just celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary. We have 17 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren, and we have we're very blessed, a lot of family and support. I worked here in Faribault for 35 years as a licensed practical nurse in the nursing home field, and that transitioned really why I went into the legislature, because of the needs of the residents that I cared for and served in the nursing home. So I got into the legislature and found out that there's a lot more to it than just nursing homes. So I've been very fortunate in working for the residents that not only in the nursing homes and their families, but also all of the constituents with all the many needs that they bring to me. I lived here, my husband, this is the 5th generation of Fritz's, so we've been involved in this community. We're embedded in this community. So I have a burning desire for public service, and this is a great avenue for me to do that. So again, thank you for the time.
Thank you, Patty. Brian.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate the invite. And I'll just explain a little bit about myself. My wife Liz and I have lived in Faribault for over 17 years. We've been married for over 37. And we have 4 children and 6 grandchildren and 1 on the way in December. So we're excited about that. We actually moved to Faribault from Bemidji. Our oldest son is deaf, and he wanted to attend the state school for the deaf, which we thought was a great idea. And through quite a few miracles, I was offered a job in Faribault, and we moved the family down in September of 1996. And our son did really well at the deaf school. It's been a blessing. He went from an average to below average student to one of the top in his class, athletically wise, and just really excelled. Really happy about that. My background, I've worked in small business all my life. I started running our family business when I was 19 years old, and we did a Suzuki and Polaris business up in northern Minnesota. So I'm very kind of oriented towards the business. I really like small business, and there's a lot of things you can do with that. I'm currently employed at Northern Tool and Equipment. I am their warranty administrator for Northern Tool Manufacturing, and I love my job. I love helping people. I'm kind of the go-to person when there's a escalated call or a situation where we need to resolve the situation, and I love it. We take a bad situation and we turn it into a positive situation. I love doing that, so I love my job. But I actually am running because I believe that Minnesota is currently headed in the wrong direction, and I would like to see some changes. Currently, our state is the 3rd highest tax state for businesses and 5th overall for taxes. Some of our major companies are moving out of state because of that, and I just don't want to see that happening. I don't know if anybody realizes, but small business in Minnesota makes up 85% of the economy. So to me, it's a real passion of mine to get the small business industry, healthy again. And for my wife and myself, we are in good jobs. We're blessed with good jobs. But my concern is for our grandchildren coming up. We have 6 grandchildren, 4 live in Minnesota. And for their future, that's why I want to be elected to the House, is to see if we can make it a little better.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate you being here. We have quite a few questions we want to get through, so I'm just going to ask you to try to get right to the point on these. And the first question might be a little tricky because it's really more about process. So the question is, when a new bill is proposed, how do you plan to determine whether you support or oppose? What process will you use? And Brian, we start with you.
Okay, thank you. Well, first I would talk to my constituents in the district and just kind of get their feeling about that, what effects it'll have on them. I'd also make sure that the bill is physically responsible and that there wouldn't be any long-term negative effects from a bill like that. Our state is getting just too far into debt. We have about $7 billion in bonding debt and about $17 billion in unfunded pension liabilities. And I just want to make sure we're physically responsible and not, biting off more than we can chew for that bill.
Okay, thank you. Patty?
Well, thank you, Kim. And that is a question, that I live with every day because I hear from my constituents daily. This is the new technology enables me to have emails, texts, and I do have them, and phone calls. I have my home phone, my cell phone, my office phone. And so I have a real good connection with the constituents. And those are the people who bring us the legislation and the ideas and the needs. So I have that. And when I get that, I research. And I talk with the pro and the con, both the advocates and the adversaries. There's oftentimes 3 sides to every issue, and sometimes 4. So a bill that is brought to me that affects the constituents in the district that I represent I live it. And so I get I over-prepare. I will say that. I study and read and look up things, and I meet with the author. And oftentimes, if I have enough information that the information provides me the opportunity to make a clear-cut decision, then I share that. And then I stay with that. I don't falter or change my opinion. So I think people have a pretty good idea when they bring me something, whether it's a good idea or not. But I am willing to sit down and listen to all sides.
That's good. I think the origin of this question really came from members that are weary of partisan divides and hopeful that people will be inclusive of all ideas and trying to avoid the clear-cut party lines. So my next question is about the minimum wage law, and we know that law has passed, but we also know there's some conversations beginning about eliminating the automatic inflation adjustment to that in that law. So do you think there's any chance of removing that automatic adjustment, Patty?
No, that won't happen. For one thing, I believe in it, that we should keep it. It values the adjustment that we made in the minimum wage. When people because August is when we initiated the $8 per hour wage for people. You still can't live on $8 an hour. So, and in the bill itself, it is graduated, and that's a good thing for small businesses in my district because they could not absorb a $10 or $15 an hour. There's no way that Greater Minnesota or small business can absorb that. So the graduated amount is good, the $8 this year, and that's if you're making $500,000 or more. So small business is paying $7.75 per hour. The inflationary factor values that. It keeps that value so that we can't lose that. So that's the purpose to me, of the inflationary factor.
Brian, do you have a different response to that, or do you agree?
No, I actually disagree. As a former business owner, I would have not have voted for that minimum wage hike. The reason being that it's tough on the small businesses alone, and then when you have Right now, there's temporary employment services that are paying $10 per hour for skilled labor, and now we're going to be bringing in something for potentially maybe $9.50 an hour as an unskilled laborer. It's just not enough, wide enough gap, and we have to remember that minimum wage was never designed to make a living off of. It was basically designed as an introductory to learn work skills and to work your way up. I do believe the older minimum wage was too low, but I'm feeling that $9.50 for a lot of businesses is going to be very tough to justify that with typically the temporary services at $12 or $10 an hour. The last thing we want to do is create an automatic adjustment for increases. I had it told to me one time it's like an automatic inflation. It's an engine, inflation engine that you can't turn off. Mm-hmm. And for businesses, it's real critical that we don't handicap the businesses to be able to supply the workforce that they need.
One of the comments I've heard about the inflation adjuster is that it takes the heat off the legislators in terms of having to vote or not vote on an increase. How do you react to that?
I don't mind voting for an increase in minimum wage.
So you wouldn't?
This is my second vote for it. No, I was co-author on both bills.
Okay. Brian, did you have a response?
Yes. Originally, the inflation adjuster had no cap on it, and that was pushed through by the Democratic Party, which is what they felt was right at the time. But then they realized later that would be pretty dangerous to do that. So they did put a 2% cap on it, which is good. The only thing I differ is that at local business, at local levels, at state levels, it's tough to have kind of a one-size-fits-all for minimum wage. I just think we could have maybe worked with it a little bit differently than the way it was done.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I provided some questions in advance, but I'd like to bundle the next two together just so you can be aware of that. Businesses have said that they feel that the additional taxes have really been kind of a pile-on effect, and they often will comment, and in fact did comment in our survey recently, that it seems like the legislators don't care if new laws hurt or hinder business development. How do you react to that? And Brian, we start with you on that one.
Okay. Well, in my opening statement, I did say that Minnesota was the third highest business taxes in the country, and I thought that was pretty shocking. Right now, the business climate is not healthy, and that's why companies like Mechatronic and Northwest are moving to different states and different countries, and I'm concerned about that. I don't want to see healthy businesses moving away from our state when we can maybe make it more competitive to be, not only statewide competitive and countrywide competitive, but even worldwide competitive. And right now, I don't think we have that right now.
Okay. Well, I don't agree with that, because I actually, and I'm really happy to have the opportunity to say this, because we really did a great deal of work for small business in the legislature. We don't dislike small business people. We love them, and especially Greater Minnesota. This last session, we put more effort and more money towards helping Greater Minnesota small businesses than has ever happened in the history of the state legislature. Some of those things I was happy to be a co-author on. Broadband. Small business comes to us and brings us their problems and their ideas. And I have a son in small business. My father-in-law was in small business. Fortunately, they have been successful, but they do complain, and they do have ideas, and they do feel somewhat of a squeeze with the taxes. I get that, and the Greater Minnesota legislators get that as well. So we really did get the ear of our speaker and the governor. because when the governor was proposing an extra tax on small businesses at 2%, I stopped him in caucus and said, no way, this is not going to happen in greater Minnesota. And they heard. So we do have the best intentions of our small business people at the legislature. The problem is there's just fewer of us in greater Minnesota. There are fewer greater Minnesota legislators than there are metropolitan. So we're sort of up against it when it comes to trying to make our point, but we've made our point. So I really do feel, but it's not over. We need to continue. The small business advocates are there, and they need to continue to be there advocating on behalf of our small business, because they are, as Dennis said, 85% of our economy. It's the bedrock of our economy.
So I'm a little unsure about the, I understand that there is often a divide between metro and outstate, but in the area of taxation on small business, why do you make that differentiation? You know,
I think because I'm just up against it so much, Kim, that I have to be very outspoken and continue to make the case for small business in greater Minnesota. There isn't really a difference, but I feel I'm a greater Minnesota legislator, so that's what I reference.
Okay, we're going to kind of keep going on that idea of what's going on with business, and stay with you, Patty, on the question about regulation. So many of our members mentioned that they feel that they're overregulated and that it puts a lot of burden on their business. Do you think Minnesota overregulates?
No, I don't. I do think that we had some long-standing regulation that had run its course and really oftentimes was ignored and not followed. And so we were able to, this last session, if you remember, was the on session. And it seemed like, in the beginning I was happy about that, but then I also thought, I hope this doesn't take up all of the time, because there's a lot that we need to continue to do. And it didn't. It actually worked out well. There were many, many things that were brought before us early on, in the first week even. We were able to look at some of these redundant regulations and rid ourselves of them. I do worry, and I think about regulations, especially coming from an industry that I worked in, nursing. You need to have a high ladder. You do need to have a high ladder of expertise, and you do need the regulations because of safety and health. So when it does impact people's health and safety, I am, those are the policies that I am probably most, and most legislators must, I think, feel are necessary. But we always have our guard up also for something that, is probably frivolous. And they do. Some people do bring, but you have to give them their day and time and listen and see, maybe where you can work something out and also educate them about it. Okay. Brian?
I have to say I would probably disagree there too. I think we are overregulated. One of the examples that I had was now there's a requirement for a water softener installer to be licensed, and I just think it's time to give our businesses some regulatory relief. One of the things that I was talking about with some other people that I know at the legislature is if I am elected, if I'm fortunate enough to get elected, that I would actually sit down with the business sector and make a list of the most burdensome new laws and work with my colleagues and the Small Business Caucus to repeal some of the more burdensome ones. So sorry I disagree, but I believe that we're in the wrong direction there too.
That's what an election is about, right? Yes. We're not expecting you to agree on everything.
It's a democracy.
Yes.
We're free to disagree.
So we know in the coming session there's going to be a lot of talk about transportation, and when we talk about transportation there's discussion about efficiencies within the organizations charged with maintenance and upkeep and new transportation and funding. So how do you strike that balance between requiring efficiencies and how much funding is enough? And Brian, we start with you on this one.
I have to admit I don't know everything about the transportation issue. I have been given a few pieces of information that my sister Marion O'Neill is a House representative, and she was one of the authors of the bill that required MnDOT to fund the 5% efficiency in the upcoming budget year. She said this netted about $55 million in monies for roads and bridges. And I think what I've heard from more people knocking on doors this year is that they would really like to see the money spent on roads and bridges. They're in disarray and need some repairs more than new light rail transit.
Okay.
I know there's talk about St. Paul to Rochester and huge staggering amounts of money. And before anything like that happens, I hope we sit down for a long time and talk about costs and benefits and those type of things.
Patty?
Well, transportation, I think, is going to be one of the top priorities this next session, and should be. You're right about our roads and bridges. They're 50 years old or older, many of them, and especially out in greater Minnesota. I just attended the Alliance, the Transportation Alliance conference down in Owatonna last week. It was excellent, where there were city, county, state commissioners and mayors and representatives, myself included, along with the folks from the Alliance, and they did an excellent presentation on, and I hope that they could share that with everyone, because it's very, very important. And when we look at our bridges that are 50 years old, it's dangerous. Fortunately, the viaduct that we were able to get done was done because I voted for the increase in the gas tax, and I found money through that amount of money to move that up on the agenda to get it done. That was, really a miracle when you think about it. But not all our roads and bridges are in that good of condition. Our smaller bridges, and we need to get our goods and services from greater Minnesota to the folks. And nowadays, people want, and I said this in Owatonna, they want what they ordered an hour from now.
Right.
I mean, it's amazing the amount of business that trucks, UPS, and others on the roads are moving our goods and services all of the time. But it's very dangerous when we don't put the amount of money that we need, but we really don't have the money. So that's another thing. The MnDOT efficiencies, that's a good bill. That's a good thing, but it's just a spit in the bucket compared to what we really need. So we do have to go back this next session, and I hope that everything is on the table. There are a lot of ideas out there, and a lot of good ideas. And also some folks have brought ideas outside the box that we're open to listening to, so that we can resolve these 50-year deficient bridges and roads in our area.
Well, we're going to have to skip a couple of the questions that we plan to ask, but luckily there are other opportunities to meet the candidates. We know that there's an open house being planned by the Student Senate at South Central College. We're having a Pints and Politics opportunity at Mill City Restaurant during several Tuesday nights in October, and there's also forums hosted by the AAUW. So there are many opportunities to get to know the candidates, and of course there's all the media attention that will be paid to them in the weeks ahead. So we look forward to hearing more on the questions that we had hoped to ask. But we'll give each candidate about a minute now to just conclude with any comments that they would like to make, and maybe something specific about why we should vote for you. And Patty, we're going to start with you.
Well, thank you very much, Kim, again for having me today. And I just want to say that I definitely am a person of service. And, when you get to be my age after this many years on this earth, and you've had an opportunity that I have had, and many opportunities in my life to be of service, I continue to want to do that and expand on that. I have a lot of energy left in me and a lot of passion. I've said it before, I live in the best place. You just get in the car and you just come down 35, you take an exit, and you're in Faribault, Minnesota. And my district, Greater Minnesota, has so much to offer. So I'm kind of like a cheerleader in some respects for us, and I want to continue to do that and continue to bring home support and opportunities for all of the people that I represent in this district, not, excluding anyone. So I'm, again, very pleased and happy that I am running again, and I hope to continue to serve. Thank you.
And Brian, your concluding comments?
Yes, first off, thank you for the invite again. Thanks, Patty, for coming. I look forward to this election coming up November 4th. I bring a background of a business perspective. I would like to see this state be much more healthy. Only thing I can say is if I get elected, I will work my hardest to bring it back to a healthy business climate and take care of hopefully the insurance problem that's going on right now with MNsure. A lot of problems and trying to carry that out. I love Faribault. I've been here 17 years ago. Our oldest son who graduated from the deaf school graduated in 99. Our plan at that time was to move back to Bemidji because that's where all our friends and family are. But we loved it down here, and it's funny. I'll give you a quick little background on me. We moved here September 96, not knowing that I had a brain tumor, and in January of 97, I had brain surgery. And there's kind of the Brian before surgery, which we help people re-roof their houses. I help people move. My wife and I did Sunday school teaching. I was a hockey coach. We did foster care. I mean, we just really liked being involved in the community and helping people. After the brain surgery, it left me partially paralyzed, so I can't do the roofing. I can't do the moving of houses, furniture, and that type of thing. We're still involved in our church. We're still in the Welcome Center at our church. But I think the doctor gave me about 5 to 10 years to extend my life with the brain tumor, and that was in 97. They said that. So, knock on wood, I'm still here. It hasn't started to regrow yet. So, my take on this is I have a second chance in life to help people. And I really want to get active and be able to help people just in a variety of ways. And I can't do it physically, but maybe this way at the Capitol I can help a number of people. So that'd be my goal.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Patty. We appreciate you both being here and sharing information that'll help voters make a good decision in the November 4th election. And thank you for watching Candid Conversations with Candidates.